they've done to Star Wars, a wretched rebirth. Tolkien's rolling in his grave as they destroy Middle-earth. I was filled with grief, it was time to make a stand. The social justice story thieves have forced my hand. So I had to ride to fight the hacks. I'm letting all of my rage out. I'm StoryMan-Jack.
Sacrifice, A Christmas Story by StoryMan-Jack. I sat before the fire as an old man, remembering what it was like to be a kid when I still believed. When elves and red-nosed reindeer were the images and visuals posted in claymation and motion stop on our TV. That's what I ruled our holiday break. Holiday break, I growled to myself. It's Christmas, damn it. What, Papa? Aiden, my youngest grandson, asked. He played in front of the tree, opening and closing the little "'Twas the Night Before Christmas" golden book I'd found in the garage. My daughter didn't know about it. Child's mother didn't want my outdated views warping the kid's mind. Here I was, cursing in front of him after all. Don't worry about it, kid. In a way, I understood what my daughter meant. It was hard times. And it seemed like hard times just kept getting harder. She didn't want the little 3-year-old to expect some kind of magic wish to make Christmas better. To tell the kid that only if he was good could he have what he wants. And there was no way they could afford what he wanted. Besides, what was it to me? At 3 years old, it wasn't my responsibility to raise the kid, nor was it my place to tell anyone else how to raise theirs. I made enough mistakes of my own. My kids would have to make their own mistakes. That was the way of things. I didn't listen to my parents after all. Not that they were always correct, either. What, Papa? Aiden insisted. Just thinking about something I lost, I told him, rendering down the sauce of my thoughts into something he might be able to consume. Was it impotent? He asked, his face earnest as he used his sleeve to swipe at a runny nose. This kid's nose always seemed to be constantly running in the winter. I laughed as I lifted him up onto my lap and cleaned his face with the handkerchief I started keeping around because of it. Important, I corrected, clearly enunciating the word. Maybe it was important, but it doesn't really matter. What was it? The kid really wanted to know. So I considered. And after a moment, watching his face, remembering the wonder and imagination I'd had when I was little, I spoke. What if I tell you a story? A Christmas story. One that we don't have a book for. The kid would probably fall asleep in a little bit anyway. He always did when I told him stories. A story about Christmas? He asked. I made up one, I told him, and adjusted him in my lap. You can tell your mom I made it up. No harm, no foul. Okay, I guess. He pulled at the top of his little sleep jumper, red with green Christmas trees as print. He was ready for presents in the morning. Well, the few we could all give him. When I was about your age, I began as he leaned back in my arms, and I began to rock in the soft chair. You were never little like me, he argued. I was. I promise, I told him with a smile. As hard as that's even for me to believe. Mommy says you're older than rocks, he informed, as if it were a fact stamped in the encyclopedia. Well, Maybe some rocks, I snorted, teasing back, like the ones in your mom's head. It was our ritual back and forth. Finally, I eyed him. Do you want to hear this story or not? It isn't real, remember? So, does it really matter if I was really ever your age or not? Really small like you? He shrugged. Well, okay. I waited for a moment and then began again. When I was about your age, 3 or 4, I decided to stay up late one night and catch Old Man Claus sneaking into the house. Who is Old Man Claus? He asked. I'd been trying to be vague. Some people call him Santa Claus. I gave up and just told him. Oh, that old guy that you tell wishes to. At the stores? He asked. As I nodded, he spoke again. Mommy says they're just people trying to sell stuff. I sighed, and he just watched me, the expectant look on his face. Too adorable for words, really. Well, in our story, they just are good people pretending to be Old Man Claus. And yes, he did sort of grant wishes if you were super extra good and really believed. Really? His eyes grew wide. He gave kids what they wished for? It was my mistake, stupid as it was. I should never have even started this. No, this was all made up, remember? Oh yeah, the boy said, the countenance disappointed. Okay, my brothers and I decided we were going to hide under the tree. We could stack presents on top of ourselves, and if we were really, really still, maybe we could catch the old man putting our wishes under the tree. I bet that would be fun, Aiden noted. What? Catching you? Santa Claus? He shook his head, piling presents on top. He laughed, thinking himself silly. After a bit of a tickle fight, where I, as always, lost horribly, I continued. Well, we made a mistake. Huh? He asked. Well, we waited to sneak down after our parents were asleep, but didn't realize how late it was. It seemed like it took them forever to go to bed. How did you know? He asked. I could almost see the wheels spinning in his head. Because we had to wait until they turned off the television, I told him. Oh, his face fell disappointed. Mom falls asleep with ours on, he told me. And you stay up all night. I showed him a confused face. I do not, I told him. You're awake at bedtime and you're awake for breakfast, he informed me. And you nap in your chair all night. Well, I'm old, I gave as my excuse. Yeah, older than rocks, he confirmed. And I sighed before beginning again. Anyway, when they finally went to their room, I was the only kid awake enough to sneak downstairs. Was it scary? He asked with honest sincerity. The only stairs we have are the ones to the basement, and it's dark down there. Daddy says there might be monsters, so I can't go down there. I shook my head and wondered if my son-in-law was going to give the kid a phobia or something. Only a little scary, I said, but that was just because I was afraid Mom or Dad would catch me sneaking around when I was supposed to be asleep. In truth, it had probably only been half an hour after we were supposed to go to bed. I caught the boy nodding his agreement. The poor kid had gotten his own bottom warmed up often enough for sneaking around at night, usually getting into sweets or something. All kids are alike in some ways. What happened? He asked, drawn in by the tale. Well, I got under the tree and tried to stack the presents in boxes around me so that no one would see me. I couldn't really do it as well as if other people were there to help, I continued. Aiden looked down at the few packages under the tree. They were all for him and his little brother. What little we could afford to get. His parents were going to bring the boys big gifts after they fell asleep. You're pretty big, he told me. I don't think they'd hide you very well. I laughed. I wasn't always this big, I told him. I was about your size. Nuh-uh, he argued. I didn't feel like convincing him. This is a made-up story, remember? Okay, he said, obvious skepticism in his voice. I eyed the kid, his blue eyes intent on what I was about to say next. Well, I hid as best I could, but I guess it just wasn't good enough, I told him. Told you so, he said, triumphant. Hush, Aiden, I'm telling this thing, I admonished. Well, I heard a laugh, and then a red mittened hand pulled me out from under the tree. My voice grew low and serious. Aiden was wrapped. I smiled and softened the sinister stone was coming. There was a booming laugh. One so loud I thought it would wake up my parents and my little brothers, I told him, and his eyes were wide. Little Johnny Ray, the epitome of the Father of Christmas, knelt before me, his eyes almost low enough for me to look into his. Pit a what? The kid asked. It means he looked exactly what the real Santa Claus should look like, I tried to explain. Oh, that guy, the wish guy? Not as skeptical as he was, just into the story now, really. Yeah, the wish guy, I agreed before continuing. I was frozen as the big fat bearded guy spoke. What'd he say? Aiden asked. I dropped my voice and made it as grandfatherly as I could, trying to remember how my own father spoke to my daughter when she was small. Johnny, do you know the story of the first Christmas? He asked me. And I nodded that I did, the story of baby Jesus. You know that one, right? I asked the kid in my lap. Yeah, real Christmas, the day baby Jesus was born. Mommy told me about that. Good. I nodded and continued in a lower tone. Well, the true meaning of Christmas is sacrifice, the old man said. I paused and saw it in my mind's eye. That smile he had, it warmed you like he was giving you the feeling he had every time he ate those warm cookies and that cool milk. I didn't even notice if Aiden was paying attention anymore. Those old wise men that gave the gifts to our Savior, Johnny, they sacrificed everything they had to travel to see you. And they gave him riches that meant little to them compared to what the child meant. Finally, I looked and saw that Aiden was trying desperately not to doze off, nodding between waking and sleep. But he was trying to hold on to the story. What did you want for Christmas? That old man asked me after he finished his lesson about Jesus. But it was a question I didn't really understand. I told him that I wanted a good red wagon, Aiden, like my friend Chuck had down the street. It was made of metal and it was red and he could carry heavy rocks in it. The rocks you're older than, Papa? Aiden giggled and then yawned. I wish I could get a wagon like that someday. If the wishing guy was real and not made up in one of your stories, he finished before his eyes began to droop again. Well, he didn't give me my wagon, you see. He told me I wouldn't get my wagon because I needed to learn his lesson first. But that someday, I'd figure it out and come to understand what he meant. I took on his voice again with my best of my ability. As punishment for disobeying your parents and staying awake to catch this old elf in his business, you won't get your wagon. And Johnny, thank you for the cookies. I looked down at the child who snored softly in my lap, smiling as I leaned back, the fire going on the other side of the room, and the tree flashing in its amalgam of flickering lights. I yawned as I thought about how the old man gave me a skateboard instead, the only other thing I'd said I wanted, though I never really learned how to use this stupid thing. As it turned out, it was pretty hard to learn to ride a skateboard when you had to travel 15 miles to find anything flat enough to use the damn thing. Every road was gravel or dirt. I woke to a whisper of a voice I'd just been recalling. there stood a man in red and white, unchanged, not a whit. In the 60-odd years since I'd last seen him. And before him sat a little old-style red wagon, though it seemed smaller than I'd remembered. "Well, that's just because you're older," the old man chuckled. "You are bigger after all, Johnny." I just nodded at him, thinking the whole story was made up. But a made-up story out of a dream or a memory. Not an actual memory, but here stood Santa Claus. "And you understand now?" the jolly old elf asked. I nodded, fearing that I'd wake everyone up if I spoke, or maybe I'd wake up from my own dream. "It's about the giving, the sacrifice of what you have to give someone who is more important to you than yourself." He nodded at Aiden. "Just like we are of Christ's family, we give, sacrifice to those we love, to fill them, understand by a little measure that they are loved, no matter what." I smiled down at little Aiden in my arms. "Merry Christmas, little Johnny Ray, and remember, whether they believe or not, the magic is always there. Christ is always there, and his gifts are boundless, for his sacrifice was far greater than our own. Tell the boy that your story was a secret. I have a feeling we'll have to teach him some of these lessons someday." The old man finished, but was gone when I looked up from my grandchild. The next time I woke, Aiden was pulling that little red wagon across the floor. That was the lesson. Not one of words or a story, but one of sacrifice. The lesson and the gift was the feeling of watching a little piece of my heart, a grandchild, grateful for the gift I'd given up so long ago. So long ago, in fact, that the memory had been like a dream or a story. Merry Christmas and have a Happy New Year.